Hello and welcome back to our podcast, Ayahuasca Therapy. And today I'm here with Derek Janusevsky, and I'm very excited to get to meet him. He has some good projects going and also have some great experience with the medicine and in this field. So I'm grateful that we were connected, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
So I always ask the same question from people at the beginning, that how did you cross path with the medicine? We always talk about your call to this medicine. I know that a lot of people have great struggles, who received this calling in the end and tried many things before, we were led to the medicine. So if you want to share a little bit about your personal path.
Sure. My path has been it was started in trauma. When I was born, my mom almost died. When I was young, I lived with my mother, who was belligerent, abusive alcoholic. My father was gone. I lived in West Springfield, Massachusetts, which is a rough neighborhood, all Puerto Rican. So I didn't really fit in at all. I got beat up a lot, and I didn't feel like I fit in there. I remember all the way going back. My childhood was littered with all kinds of abuse. Sexual abuse started at 2. Had a lot of sexual abuse between the ages of 5 and 10. That's when my mom left West Springfield. We moved to a really rough part of Jacksonville, Florida, where I was the only white kid in the whole school. Got beat up a lot there too. My mom's drinking progressed. I continued to be sexually abused there by a babysitter, a scoutmaster, and a physician's assistant, all separate, very unusual. And didn't feel like I fit in there either. From there, we moved to the very corner of this really, really rich area of Florida, where there's a trailer park and this like little spot, little corner. So I didn't fit in there either, because everybody else was like really rich, really extremely wealthy. And got beat up there a little bit less. And then my dad at that point got sober. He was battling alcoholism and addiction. So he brought me up to Newburyport, Massachusetts, which is a North Shore coastal town, rich Irish Catholic alcoholic, good old boys. My graduating class was 125, 135, somewhere in there. And I definitely didn't fit in there, but I think that was more because of the fact that I had no idea how to fit in. At this point, I was a high school student with no real understanding of how to connect with other people. Combine that with anxiety that started somewhere around 6 or 7 years old. I remember cringing over something for a long time, and that feeling in my chest continued my whole life. So from there, I dove into school. I couldn't even, like even the rejects, I use that in quotes. I didn't really find a friend group in them either. I had 1 or 2 people that I hung out with. And the one that I hung out with the most, I would call him my best friend in high school. He threw me a party for my going away party to go to college, because without friends, I had nothing to do with schoolwork. So I did really well. It was the first time I drank heavily. I got very drunk, ended up causing problems with the relationship with my friend there, because I slept with his girlfriend. I threw up everywhere. It was a bad scene. So that was kind of the beginning of my addiction. So I went to college, joined the rugby team, learned how to drink, and I smoked a lot of pot. Flunked out in a year, just didn't go to class. And then I moved back to Florida because I didn't want to deal with the snow. I was going to college in Connecticut. My dad still lived in Massachusetts. So I went down there and met somebody who introduced me to cocaine, stayed with her for a few months. That kind of got wild, and I got away from that. Met the woman that became my wife. We had 3 kids, and this is where I kind of started to become obsessive, and compulsive. I won't say OCD. That's a specific diagnosis, but I was very obsessive about things, and I was very compulsive in what I did, things that I bought, places that I went, and all of that. And so I learned about, my first kind of obsession was when I learned about buying houses for like no money down. I figured this trick out, or a couple tricks out, and I ended up buying 12 houses, working on them. So I had a job, and I was working on the houses at night, renting them out, and built up quite a large sum of equity and money and all of that. And then I went to work for myself at home. And when I did that, the obsessions really kicked in. So I started working for myself, which was 30, 40, 50 hours a week. I was playing poker professionally, to support my family because I was building a business from home. And this was in like 2005, when, working from home remotely was not really a thing. And I built it up pretty good because I was obsessive about it, and I was obsessive about the poker, and I was obsessive about video games. So I would go into the office, have 3 screens, and be in there for 12 to 15 hours a day, 6 days a week, totally disconnected, and created separation in the marriage, which dissolved. It got a little toxic at the end, like many, people in their 20s when they get divorced, it just gets nasty. So I left, and I was feeling awful. Like my whole life was shot, I thought, 29 years old in 2007. Or 31, whatever. It was right around my Saturn return. And my friend came over and dropped an ounce of cocaine on the table and said, "This will make you feel better." And that started my real run with addiction. So that went on from about 2007 until about 2006 to about 2017. It was 11 years that eventually, it really got out of control, until eventually I was going to AA. I was trying all kinds of things, and nothing seemed to work. I didn't have an understanding of the 12 steps. I didn't know what I was doing. I just was trying to not use, or trying to not drink. It didn't work. I was in and out of jail and all that. So I heard on Joe Rogan's podcast him talking about ayahuasca and that it might help with addiction. So I convinced my mom to put up some money, and I went to Soul Quest. And immediately, about 45 days of no cravings, no need to use, no interest in anything. The team there was amazing. Dr. Scott, Norrell, and then some others that were just absolutely fantastic. Nishala and Anthony were there, and some other people that were just amazing people. So I went back to using because I thought like I was cured, and I didn't really do anything differently other than not use, until eventually the addiction grabbed me again, and I used, went back, got some relief again, went back to using. And so at this point I was out of money, I was out of resources. My mom's like, "I'm not paying for it again." Like, "No, it's not working. You're just going down there. It's just another drug." It wasn't exactly like that, but that's kind of the undertone, So I kept calling the church, I kept calling Chris, and I kept calling various different people. Nishala is the one who took my calls mostly, and she connected me with Colleen, who's still there. Love Colleen. She was there sitting my first retreat, and so was Narelle. They were both sitting my first retreat, to do their inner work or whatever. And she says, "Listen, I have," at this point she was a volunteer, "I have several weekends that have been saved up, and I'll give you one," but she said, quote, "But you have to dive headfirst into a new way of life." And as an addict, I'm going to say whatever I'm going to say to get whatever I want. And so I'm like, yes, of course, I'll definitely do that. And I went there with a mindset of how to dive into a new way of life. It might even been my intention for the weekend. I don't really remember But I do remember the message that I got was to start volunteering. So I started volunteering there. And the first weekend I was there was this argument over who was going to do the buckets. Nobody wanted to do the buckets. And so I, knowing that I was just brand new there, was like, well, I know I can wash buckets. Like, you guys have more important things to worry about. I'll wash the buckets, and then you don't have to worry about that. Any weekend I'm here, no matter how long I'm here, I will do the buckets. And so that was that. Nobody else did buckets. I got to do all the buckets. And in the beginning, it was like I was really happy that I was taking this pressure off of their shoulders. Then it sort of rode into this sort of just a thing that I did, that I took for granted. And then eventually I really grew to love washing the buckets. It's something that, is really amazing service. Like, I really appreciated that I could do that for the guests. I could do that for the team. I could do that for for everybody else. I could just remove their stress. And so Carlos and I worked together washing those buckets a lot. But I did a quick count. Over that year, I washed about 10,000 buckets. Happily so. I mean, I built this French drain because we were just kind of dumping into the woods, and I made an altar with a French drain with like plants around it, so that we could dump it in there, and then it was all going back in one place. We could cleanse one space, and really, like, it was important to me. So from there, I was there every weekend. Eventually, they started paying me $200, and I would show up on Thursday midday, and I would work until Monday late afternoon, setting up, tearing down, washing, cleaning, making beds, carrying the mats everywhere, setting up the ceremony tent, setting up the ceremony space, making sure we had driving back and forth. I was doing all these different things, and happily so, for $200. I spent about $100 in gas and about $100 on food those days. So it ended up being like service work that sort of my expenses were covered, and I was happy with that. I could go home, drive Uber for a few days, pay my bills, and go back. Excuse me. So then eventually I was a significant part of the team. I was kind of, one of the leaders at the church after a year, because I was doing so much and I never stopped. I mean, I worked a lot. I was in every ceremony, all three. I was cleaning up. I was still doing the buckets. I was doing all this, rearranging the shed, which always got wrecked, and everything like that. So I asked for a raise, and Chris says, okay, here's some work to do. Here's some pay for this work. We're going on vacation. We'll come back and we'll talk about it when I get back. Well, my whole support system and my reason for showing up disintegrated for 3 weeks. I had nobody to talk to, except for my old life where I was using. So I went back and I relapsed, and because of it, they let me go. And we can look at that decision like, okay, this is somebody who helped the church, we should help him. That's one way to look at it. But when they let me go, I mean, they did it in a very loving way. It was firm, but it was loving. Like, they wanted me to get better. And they said, you can come and sit with the medicine. Like, you worked here for long enough. You can come and sit with the medicine. We can't have you on the team. Not if you're actively using. So I was mad at the time for sure, but when I look back on it, it wasn't a bad decision. Was it rooted in kindness? Maybe. Was it the right decision for me? It definitely was. And it was done with love. I mean, the whole team was there. There were tears shed, and it's what led me here. So I left there, went back to Ubering. I was basically staying sober, just on will and white knuckles. And my son at the time was going to school in Boston. So I drove up to Boston for Thanksgiving. And just because of circumstance, I had some people that knew that I worked around medicine and asked me if I could give them some psilocybin and basically trips it for them. It was a ceremony, but I'm not a medicine man, so I don't know how that mixes. But I gave them some medicine. They took it. I made sure they were okay. And then I helped them work through some of their integration the next day. It was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was going to be 4 or 5 people. It was 12. And it was beautiful. was really beautiful. So I went back home, and the day that I got home in Florida, I got a phone call from somebody who I met at my very first ayahuasca ceremony at Soul Quest. And he says, "Hey, I just got back from Peru. I was studying with Mama Rosa for the last 6 months. She taught me how to brew. She taught me how to serve. She taught me Icaros. She taught me how to hold this container. I worked right with her for this entire time. And I want to serve some medicine, but I don't know how to organize. Can you do it?" And I said, I don't know how to do that. And I don't really want to get involved. I'm afraid of law. I'm afraid of all of these problems. And he just kept asking and asking and asking. And eventually I said, fine, like I'll give it a shot. I wasn't really running on very much money, but I found 5 people to pay us $350 for the weekend. A sixth one came along with one of them. And I was back at that place where we had this mushroom night, we'll call it. Now, I was used to Soul Quest, right? Where they have these nice mats and where they have these nice buckets and they have everything is clean and there's a team and all this stuff. And I show up there and we're on like basically the floor of a dusty dance hall in a arts and wellness center, this kind of community living group of artists and musicians and whatnot, with couch cushions that are wrapped in sheets so that they have mats. I mean, one of them is, you know what a papasan is? One of those round chairs. Yeah, that was laid flat on the ground. Somebody was like curled up on it like a puppy. It was, it was not what I wanted to provide. It was not to the standards that I have for comfort, for comfort, really. We were safe, but the comfort was dusty and it was like on the floor. It was not what I wanted. And I walked into the meeting with the owner of the place and the person serving medicine with my head down, feeling like I failed. I mean, we had like 5 cans of Amy's soup for lunch. Like we poured into a pot, heated it up, and gave some vegetables and some canned soup for lunch, and it was just not what I wanted to produce at all. And I thought they were going to be like, yeah, that didn't go well. I didn't think it went well at all. And they both were like, this was great. We got to do it again. And I said, you're out of your mind. Let me think about it. So thankfully we had more than 5. We had 6 people show up. If all 5 people hadn't shown up, I wouldn't have been able to get home because I'd spent my last $150 to get a one-way flight up to New Hampshire, trusting that the people would show up so that I could have enough money to buy a flight to go back home. So we tried it again, and somehow from Florida, some dude found people to come to a ceremony in New Hampshire that I didn't live in, from 1,300 miles away on the phone. Like, no idea how this happened. I still don't know. Like, I know I was calling people. I don't remember how I found them. I don't remember at all. Not specifically. I know I was kind of on Meetup and looking on Facebook and just kind of scourging the internet for people. So that one we had like 12 people, and the third one we had 17 were full. And so the next one thing led to another. We started doing 2 a month. I moved up to New Hampshire into this place, into this community. Eventually, we started doing pretty well. We moved outside. We had bigger ceremonies, 25 people. One thing led to another. Now, the person that called me, who I considered my partner at the time, he went off and started serving medicine for somebody else. And we had another medicine carrier come in. And we outgrew that place. So I moved to a new place. And from there, we started to have them every week or 3 weeks out of 4, with 15 people. Then we had to add on to this rental property. We had to close in a garage, make another room that was attached. And eventually we moved outside into a tent, and we started doing 3 or 4 weekends a month at like 35 people. I found myself in a place where I did not know how to actually operate a company at all. Because I went from like getting a few people to come to a retreat to handling 100 to 150 people a month. The website, all of the business stuff, the money, dealing with that amount of money, managing teams. I never managed a team of anything, marketing and just integration and training people and finding medicine carriers and trying to figure out how to avoid, prosecution, the DEA coming to the house, like all of this stuff. And I was overloaded, and eventually it got too much. That anxiety that I'd had since I was 7 was so extreme that I relapsed again in December of 2021, where I drove my truck into a tree and totaled it. I was unharmed, but my car was totaled. Everybody knew about it, and I had a whole mass exodus of the team, and I lost a lot of respect with a lot of people. Slowly, I built it back up, and I started like actually coming back together. And my mom died in June of 2022, and that instantly put me back into the depths of my addiction. And it was it's a progressive disease, whether you're drinking or using or not. And so it was a really dark hole. It was very, very dark. It was terrifying. And then the state stepped in and issued an injunction because of some zoning and planning board issues with the town. So we had to shut down, and because of my mismanagement, that put us in the red for about, like, I don't know, $70,000 or $80,000 because of mismanagement, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea what I was doing. So that was a gift, though, because God gave me this time to get sober. So I immediately checked myself into a 30-day rehab to get some education on the 12 steps and start working through the 12 steps. And then I had the option to go into sober living, but I chose to go into another 60-day treatment, an outpatient treatment, where I got a lot more education on my disease and what's causing it and all of that. And then I went into sober living, where I found myself now. So looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but when I was taking ayahuasca, and I stopped taking ayahuasca after I relapsed, I wasn't clean. I wasn't in ceremony. I was really like barely being a part of, I was running the business as best I could. But I was dirty, I just didn't want to bring that around the medicine. So I had a team on the field, but I was staying away from ceremony. It was the right thing to do, I think. And I stopped taking the medicine because I didn't feel like it was respectful to take the medicine if I had cocaine in my system, because it stays in your system for a week or two. And I was afraid of the medicine too at that point. So, but what I realized before that, when I was taking it regularly, I was in ceremony and I was working with the medicine regularly, is I was using the medicine improperly. I was using it to feel better. I wasn't using it to grow. I wasn't doing the homework that the medicine continued to tell me to do. Do yoga, do breath work with Hape, journal, meditate, write your gratitude practice, read, improve yourself, self-care, take care of yourself, go to the doctor. You have something, something's hurting in your stomach. I mean, I ended up having to have emergency surgery because my gallbladder was all out of whack. It was some stones in it. I had to have it removed. But that was hurting me for a while. I was not taking care of myself at all. I knew how to tell people what to do, but I didn't know how to do it myself. So I found myself in a position where I was sick. The medicine could not fix what I was sick with if I wouldn't give the medicine the tools, which was my involvement. So I wasn't integrating, and I was using it to kind of, but I stopped getting messages, except for you can't do this alone and do yoga. It was almost like this kind of afterthought, like here, and it was just this like uncomfortable experience. You can't do this alone, do yoga, and like almost like swatting me away when I look back on it, because I didn't know it at the time. It's not like I was doing this with intention. because, I was surrounded by so many people telling me how wonderful my words were and how much they loved me and how much they appreciated me. But like inside I was rotten. I was just eaten up with anxiety, depression, and all my traumas that I just wasn't doing the shadow work for. So now I'm doing that work. That work looks like the 12 steps right now. I've decided to take a year and live life on life's terms, as they say in the rooms, and stay in this plane of existence very, very clear-minded, and work on my shadow work deeply before I go back to the medicine. So I'm about almost 6 months in, almost 6 months so far. And the gifts of sobriety came extremely quickly for me. I was minus $70,000-$80,000 with a lot of people that wanted refunds, and now 3 people came forward. One just gave me a check for, let's just say, a year's salary, cash, to keep the sanctuary afloat, and 2 others that are signing for a property for us to move into come hopefully 5-6 weeks from now. And we are we're moving forward. It looks like we're going to close pretty soon. We're going to start making offers and close pretty soon. Yeah.
Wow, a couple of questions. So thank you for sharing so honestly about your journey and your personal struggles. Like, I think that a lot of people assume that they put people into this kind of pedestal who are serving medicine or space holders in medicine space. And I remember at the very beginning of my journey, for me, these people were perfect. And I assumed that they have everything figured out already, but that's not the case. And it's a good reminder, just for all the listeners, that we are all human beings, and even the teachers and the space holders are on their healing journey. And it's really nice to be transparent about it. And thank you for bringing the attention for the integration, because this is I think the one before you, the last episode, the previous episode, we also talked about it, that with the addictions, especially, a lot of people come to the ayahuasca with addictions, and a lot of people have very similar experience that you described, that they have this 4 to 6 weeks of ayahuasca afterglow, and there's no symptoms. Oh, I'm feeling great. And then, that the old patterns, the behavior starts creeping back, coming back. And then, going back to the medicine, as you said, not using it to grow, but just to go away from the discomfort, basically. And that's what we do with the pharmaceuticals. So using the plant medicine the same way as we use a pill. And I think that's why it's good that we are talking about these things, that people understand, the difference, and that we use this plant to grow. And as you said, this is a participatory process. I always say to my clients that the medicine does her work and you have to do your work, which is the bigger part of it. And if you don't do that, not much is going to change. There is always some incredible miracles, 1 out of a billion, something, but that's not normally what happens. What normally happens, if people do not integrate, if they do not have, guidance for their shadow work, a safe container, supportive community, all of those things that probably you will talk about, then most likely they're going to relapse when they are under stress. What you said, when your mother's died, when you are under great stress, you most likely to revert into old behavior if you didn't go to the root of the problem and didn't do that type of shadow work that you were talking about. So I think this is so important, to understand for everybody, that we need to emphasize, both parts, and we are learning this, through working with the medicine as well, how to work with this medicine with her, and I think that she really just brings up a lot of things to the surface for us to process and to look at. And that's what most people want to avoid. They want to change, but they don't want to go through the discomfort, go through the emotional release, change their mind about, fundamentally about certain things. And unfortunately, I think that change is very radical. So you are either ready to give up, the old life, or good luck holding on to, right? And this is just a journey, how how we are all walking our own path. So for you, in the end, to create the church, as I understand, it was like an organic kind of process. It was not like, a lot of people have this, so I sit with the ayahuasca and I had this download that I need to create this retreat center and something like that. It was more like this natural unfolding of, and you just went with it, and kind of, this is where you are, and where are you right now, and how is it working in the United States in terms of, legality and stuff like that?
So it's a legal, they say it's a legal gray area, but it's two conflicting black and white areas. The First Amendment, freedom of religion, and the free exercise thereof, coupled with the free exercise clause, so that it's detailed what the free exercise thereof means. It's very, very detailed. It's black and white. Not to mention the two cases that went to the Supreme Court, substantiate our claims that this is a religious sacrament, that it is our sacrament. So it's black and white. It's also black and white that it is a Schedule 1 narcotic. DMT is a Schedule 1, which according to the government scheduling system means that it has a high likelihood of abuse and addiction with no medicinal value. Now, we can agree or disagree with that. I disagree with that. But the fact is that's what it's scheduled. That's the law. So, the DEAs come to my house. I've had a conversation with them, and I asked them to kindly go ahead and head out. Thank you for your information. And they didn't want me shipping large shipments of chacruna from Peru, is basically what it was. They were confiscating my packages, and they had pictures of all kinds of stuff, but they didn't prosecute me. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. Number one, they know that it's not really a winning case for them. It's going to be a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and a lot of resources. They wanted me very badly to fill out their exemption paperwork. But as we're finding out now with the Soul Quest case, that's not a good idea, because we're putting the jurisdiction of decision making in the hands of the one agency in the government that is anti this molecule. So when they handed me the exemption paperwork, I told them I wasn't going to fill it out. And they said, you have to. I said, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to do anything. If you're going to prosecute me, go ahead. But I'm not going to fill this out. I'm not going to give you the power to make a decision for me. This is a religion, and you don't have theologians working for you. So you're not qualified to even determine whether or not I'm a religion or not. They were fine. They were nice. They were fine. They were respectful. They didn't really like that I was pushing back and standing up to them. But I was doing it in a respectful manner. I wasn't rude. I wasn't angry, or I know my rights, none of that. I was having an open conversation with them. And I have not heard from them since. That was December of 2021. That was right before my relapse, where I wrecked the truck, like right before it. I haven't heard from them since.
Right. So, okay. So that's pretty good in terms of that. There is this opportunity then in the States that under a church, that's what most people seem to be doing, running these retreats and these events under, making it a church. So what do you think about, what is your perspective about how big the ceremonies are? Because you know, just how many people is in one ceremony, and how many people, how many facilitators are present, how many leaders, you know, or conductors of the ceremony. Do you think that, is there a limit? Is there a limit for you, and you say this is the biggest group that I'm doing, or how does that work?
So very early on, I saw what Chris Young was doing. And I worked in ceremonies between 25 and 40 down there. This was back in whatever, 2017, 2018, right? And I loved that size group. We had plenty of people there, you know, one to about every 6 or 7 person, like, you know, and plus somebody else to do the cooking, somebody else to do the cleaning, like 1 to every 6 or 7 in ceremony. And that was more than we needed usually, you know, a couple of really strong people, a couple of strong people, and then some volunteers. And that was good. Along with the medicine carrier, shaman, whatever you want to call them, medicine carriers, the term that I use. So I wrote into my statement of beliefs that from day one, that 40 will never be broken, that we will have up to and no more than 40. And I did that because I could see how 45 turns into 55, turns into 100. Now, you know, whether that's safe or not, well, they seem to be putting together pretty safe and pretty successful ceremonies. But in my view, this is my view, the magic starts to get diluted, because with 40, and 40 is pushing it, like 40 is pushing it, I believe. But with 40, as long as we have activities throughout the day, and we have, what we do is we have a guardian that's kind of assigned to 10 people. So we have 4 guardians, and then we have guardian helpers, and we have volunteers, right? So the guardians are assigned to like 10 people. That's where they're going to sit in ceremony. That's their go-to person for like the immediate integration stuff. And that guardian is going to spend time with those 10 people, seek them out throughout the week, and develop relationships with them. Because as we talked about, it's not just about ceremony, right? And so 25 to 40 is, this magic happens because there's enough people where you can hear your parts of your story from other people, but it's not too big where you get swallowed up, or where wallflowers can kind of hide, you know. I don't want anybody to just be able to hide, because I think that if they are somebody who's kind of a wallflower coming out of that shell and actually, you know, in integrating themselves into a group and in opening up and being vulnerable, is a key part. With 100 people, like, I don't see the efficacy there. Again, my opinion, it's beautiful, and he's helping thousands of people down there, and that's beautiful.
I mean, there's so many ways. Yeah, we are all, you know, that's why we are talking about it. Definitely, I think the ratio is what is also super important of facilitators and people. So as you said, you have, you know, 1 facilitator to every 6, approximately 6 person, and plus extra staff volunteers who are cleaning and cooking and all that kind of stuff, you know, which is very important. And, you know, it's great that you do it this way. So how long the retreats are, and then after the retreat, is there any integration that you provide or you recommend? Do you have any follow-up, like long-term with people? If people come to you on a regular basis, do you have any limit and say, hey, go and integrate and don't drink anymore for a while? So what's your view on these things?
Our retreats are Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because it fits in with the American lifestyle right now. We are going to offer longer ones, you know, week-long retreats, and we have ideas to offer month-long retreats where they can come and stay and be a working part of the church while they're there. You know, and then there'll be medicine carriers that come in each weekend, and they'll sit with all of them. As far as our integration goes, we have a doctor of psychology She is amazing. She actually trains clinical psychologists after they're done with their graduate work at Ivy League schools. She's tremendously talented and very wise. She also works with energy, so she's not locked into this like left brain way of thinking in terms of how the mind works. She's very tuned in energetically, and she's studying right now her continuing education this whole year. It's an expensive course. I'm paying for it for psychedelic psychotherapy with doctors and with the whole emerging field. She's studying deeply about that. So I host a integration call every Tuesday night from 7 to 9. It's open to everybody in the community, not just Pachamama Sanctuary. Anybody can come. It's just a couple of rules: closed container and no crosstalk. Be kind. That's about it. You know. So beyond that, up until I came in here, one of the things that was weighing me down was I was giving everybody that came through my direct cell phone number. So about 2,000 members that we have all have my direct cell phone number. And so I was getting calls all the time. It was not sustainable. It was not healthy, but I was doing it. And so now we're creating new ways for that. We're gonna have office hours, and then we're gonna put up the numbers for like Fireside and some other resources for people to reach out if they're having crisis overnight, as well as a series of videos. They're going to be like grounding videos. I just hit the 3-week wall. What now? The things like this, so that people can access them immediately if they're having a difficulty. So common. That 3-week wall is so common. And on top of that, Suzanne is building an entire integration program that what we're going to do is we're going to have several coaches talking about several different subjects. So I'll do like 15 videos, she'll do 15, and we'll have this whole integration program that we're going to give to everybody that comes for the first month. And then hopefully they've soaked up all the information, and it'll come with study materials and all that kind of stuff with all these videos, that they'll have a good base for what they need. After that, it'll become a subscription, and instead of charging out the ear like a lot of places, it's going to be like $40 a month. It's going to be cheap. It's going to come with more integration calls and all of that. And I'm hoping that because it's not going to be branded as Pachamama Sanctuary, it's going to be branded as ayahuascacoaches.com. I own that domain. And I'm hoping that we can like give that away to a bunch of other places that don't have an integration program. So it's designed by psychologists that studied in psychedelic psychotherapy, going over all these videos, making sure they're in alignment with the messaging, teaching them medicine wheel so they can understand, is this, star medicine, is this water medicine, is this fire medicine? Am I need to transmute something right now, or do I need to feel this right now? Teaching people tools. And if my dream happens, I'm just going to give it to anybody who wants it for a month. You know what I mean? So they can get the information. Integration is extremely important to us.
This is super exciting, to hear about all this, and just blessings on all of these projects. So do you think, is there such a thing as too much medicine and people getting hooked on the medicine, or just drinking too much without integrating? Do you have any limit, for ceremonies for people to do, or do you allow people to come like every week for ceremony? Like, how does that work?
There's only been one person that I've allowed to come a whole bunch of weeks in a short period of time. And she had a tremendous growth spurt and really took to it well. I think she came to 6 retreats in 15 weeks. But, and I have people that come back, a couple times in a row, like maybe a week on, 2 weeks off, a week on, 2 weeks off, because they're trying to push through something heavy like grief or addiction or some trauma from war or something like that. And in those cases, I make sure to be in regular communication with them And if they get to a point where they're not really grounded and they're too much on the condor, they're too spread out in their view, I had them wait or I refund their money because it's important to know that like we have to live in the 3D plane, and it can't be how we want it to be. We have to some people lose the ability to accept the world as it is sometimes, and it's uncomfortable because things aren't like look at the news for 5 minutes and you're like, ugh, I mean, I still am, but I also have grown able to accept and to so when I see that, I have people back off, when they're energy healing tarot starman, and I'm like, all right, slow down.
So how is the decision making works in the Pachamama Sanctuary? So when you decide, for example, about these things to deny somebody to come to a ceremony, or when you decide about your future programs and directions, is there kind of a hierarchy and you are making the final? Is there some kind of council? Like how does that work?
So before, I was doing it all myself. I was doing all the money, all the marketing, all of the organizing, all of the execution, all of the operations, all of the hiring, all of the training, all of the integration. I was doing all of that. So a big part of what led to my breakdown. Oops. Oh, no. Sorry. So basically, once I was able to have some time away and step back and and see the forest, because I was on one tree, I realized that I needed to delegate a lot of this stuff. So in the past, I would go on intuition, and usually my intuition was right. Thankfully, I have a very strong intuition. So now I have brought on board somebody who is an operations director. I'm the operations manager, so I will execute all the things that she tells me to do. She worked for a very large pharmaceutical company for almost 10 years in operations in the Northeast quadrant for a major pharmaceutical company. And then I found Suzanne, who is a doctor in psychology. She is a harm reduction director. I can't call her integration director because there's some issues with legality. But she's the go-to for that one. We brought on somebody who has spent quite a bit of time in the jungle, who is our cultural outreach director. And so she finds different tribes that need help, and we funnel some of our profits to them. Also, she's the one who decides. I'm sorry?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, about giving back, and tell us a little more about that, like how do you give back to the guardians of the medicine, and who do you support, and what kind of percentage of your income goes towards that?
So right now we're in a big restructuring, and I don't know what it looks like. Honestly, my numbers were so messy. I just sent money to various different tribes, mostly Yawanawa tribe, because for some reason I've had this deep love for the Yawanawa tribe. I've never sat with them. I actually got to speak with Washi, a very funny situation. So she said, she said, do you have a translator? And I said, no. Okay, I'll get one. She got a translator, and she translated the Portuguese into Spanish, which I also don't speak. So we had to have my son, who was majoring in Spanish at the time, to be able to translate, and that worked out beautifully. Really great speaking with Washi. She's one of the matriarchs down there. And there was an issue, I think, with some flooding at the Huanikuin, and so I sent some money down for that. And 1 year because they don't have a lot down there at the Iwanawa, so I sent them a package of some ukuleles and musical instruments, crayons, and stuff like that for the kids. Now that we have Melissa, we have a little bit better direction. She knows exactly these people need this, so let's hire them to dig a well, or they could use a solar panel. Let's get them some electricity or whatever, and we're going to be able to direct it. I would guess it's probably going to be something like 5% of our net profits in the first couple of years, because there's a lot of repairs that have to be done in the house. But that's going to be a evolving thing,
What
and
is
then bringing.
Yeah, what is
Sorry?
your vision? What is your vision kind of for the next 5 to 10 years? What is that you would like to see, in what direction would you like to see this expand? And if you are looking for more people to come on board for this project, like who do you're looking for?
Mhm. So right now, we are looking for one last person who wants to invest in some real estate. We need a very small amount to get us over the hump. It'll be a secured loan. So that would be nice. At this point, when we open, we'll know our needs, because we have this board of directors, the operations director, the cultural outreach, the harm reduction, and a CFO that's managing the money. So we make decisions together, just to kind of wrap up that last part of the conversation. This year is going to be getting us running very smoothly, finding a new pastor for the Pachamama Sanctuary in New Hampshire, so I can take my next project. Because right now I'm writing a book that's going to be about my memoirs and the year between when I hit the tree and when we close on the property. And I'll kind of flash back to my life. From there, once we have a new pastor and everything is running properly, I'm gonna go on I'm gonna walk, basically. I'm gonna go on a walk from New Hampshire to California, which is about 4,500 miles. I'm just gonna walk straight there. Pilgrimage is the word I was looking for. There I'm going to write my second book, which is going to be a tool for integration. So it'll be about 8 months. I'll be on the road, and each one of those months will be dedicated to one portion of the Eightfold Path. So we'll dig deep into that. I'll invite people to come and walk, and we'll record a bunch of walking conversations with different people that have some insight into that portion of the Eightfold Path. I'll just invite them in. And who knows, maybe Aaron Rodgers or somebody will come and join me for a little bit. Who knows? After that, I think we're going to be building towards North Carolina is the dream. So I want to open kind of a headquarters in North Carolina on a big piece of property where we can have a community living there, growing food, kind of a contained community, as well as a few hundred acres, so that we can have large medicine family gatherings without medicine. So like music, yoga, indigenous wisdom sharing, bringing up a bunch of people from South America, some of the elders, to teach us about their culture, teach us about their tell us their stories and all that kind of stuff. That's where I want to move to within about 5 years. The other thing that is really important to me is there's so many people that are struggling with the stuff that I struggled with for the last 4 years. The legality, the money, and managing this thing, and like getting finding people and keeping the government off of their back legally and all of that. So everything has been built so that once we find people that are in alignment to actually open their own, we'll train them and we'll open theirs, and they can use our system and they can use our membership, which will protect them and us in court if anybody comes. If we have 5, 10, 15, 20,000 members, it's going to be a lot more a lot more solid if we have to go against the government. You know what I mean? It's kind of like washing a bucket on a much bigger scale. The medicine carriers that love this work get bogged down with the details of running the business. And it's very clear in the Ayahuasca manifesto, it's very clear that people that are sitting behind the altar should not be sitting behind the desk. It's very clear. It causes an ego problem. And I think we probably have, I know I've seen it a lot. If a person is serving the medicine and also dealing with the money, first of all, you're bringing that stress into the ceremony, but also now you have control over all of these things. And, ayahuasca exposes weaknesses and wounding and money, power, and sex. I mean, those are the big three. And if you got your hand in the cookie jar and you got your hand in the ceremony with everybody telling you they love you, and you're controlling everything. So now you have the money, the power, and then the people behind the altar, like the guests end up, the new members, they end up like having this emotional connection, and it, in their mind becomes some kind of a romantic connection sometimes that they project. And now you have all three, and that's really not a safe place.
Right, absolutely. So, and in terms of your own healing journey, like where are you now, and like what is that you're learning at the moment in terms of what you said, coming from that place of total disconnection and separation? How could you describe your experience like nowadays compared to that?
I mean, I'm not quite 6 months sober, so I'm still kind of getting my feet. I'm still, a toddler when it comes to that kind of stuff. However, being saturated in this community for the last 6 months has really helped me to learn how to make real, genuine connections with people, because I don't need anything from them and they don't need anything or expect anything. Either way, no expectations and no needs. We are just showing up and being supportive of one another. And so I found a community here. Not that I didn't have a community with Pachamama Sanctuary, I did, but being the leader of the community sort of has this degree of separation, right? Because everybody's looking to me for something. And I'm happy with that. But that also, I needed a community. Now I have a community of people that they don't need anything or expect anything from me. So it's genuine friendships, and we're both the same. We're all the same. So that's been extremely healing. I'm learning to develop, real deep personal connections for the first time in my life. I mean, you heard my story, so that, and coupled with doing the shadow work, which is exactly what the 12 steps are. Do you know about the 12 steps or what they actually are?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, tell us about that, because a lot of the groups, a lot of rooms are against actually using psychedelics, right? Because they say it's a drug. So you go to some rooms, right? So what is, they are fine with what are you doing, or they are like, okay, that's your higher power and it's cool with us, or how is that working?
I don't care what they think. I'm not there to care what they think. I care that I get sober and I can learn about being sober from them, right? I believe that ayahuasca is extremely sobering. I believe that it does not take you outside of your mind like alcohol and drugs. It puts you deep inside your mind. It's the opposite effect of a drug. Does it alter the mind? I think that it does the opposite. I think my mind is altered through the lenses of trauma, and it removes that alteration of ego and allows me to see clearly. Not everybody sees it that way, and that's okay. I'm not here to convince them. But when I have real, conversations with people, they don't change their mind in terms of they're going to come and sit with the medicine, but they do change their minds in coming away from such a harsh resistance to it being safe for an addict or an alcoholic. And when they bring up the I shouldn't be doing it, it's not because they want to judge me. It's because they because they care about me, right? So it's easy to have a conversation with them. And on top of that, there's a bunch of people that are in these rooms that I've seen here that have come to my church and sat with ayahuasca.
Yeah, it's growing definitely in those spaces as well. Beautiful. So what would you say to somebody who is thinking about, like answering the call of the ayahuasca now after like a couple of years of having some experience? What do you think are most important things that you would want to communicate to people before they start?
Know that you're called. Don't do it because it's a fad. Don't go along with your friends. You got to know deep inside you that this medicine is calling you. It's not, if you're really, really interested in it and you really feel interested in it deeply, that's one thing. If your friends are doing it and you heard about it and you think it's cool because you heard it on Joe Rogan and you're going to tag along and see what this ayahuasca thing is about, like, don't go. Don't go. Don't go until you're called. Because you got to be prepared. You got to be prepared. It's an intense experience looking at all of the things that you did wrong and taking responsibility, because it takes away the ability to justify, and that can be painful.
So beautifully said. I think that's perfect. Thank you so much. We're going to share all your info in the description, pachamamasanctuary.org, your website, and people can find all the information and connect with you. I'm sure that we will, meet again and talk about like many other things in this field. And thank you so much for coming today, and just have a wonderful journey and blessings on this project and on your path. So thank you, Derek.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for everybody for listening. And please follow us and share this video, and also go to avatarhealingarts.com to find out what we are cooking up next. And thank you for being here with us today. So have a wonderful day. Big heart.